like a Roman Caesar, with more warmth, of course.
She looked like a cross between a Roman emperor and a Girl Scout troop leader.
She looked like a Buddha, a Buddha, a Buddha.
I am an American, and I've lived half my life in Paris. Not the half that made me, but the half in which I made what I made. It was not what France gave you, but what it did not take away from you that was important. We all came to Paris. It was where we had to be. My brother Leo had taken the pavilion and atelier on the Rue de Fleurus. I joined him, and I sat down in there, and pretty soon I was writing. We were settled in Paris together, and we were always together. The apartment consisted then, as it does now, of 4 small rooms and a very large studio adjoining. Everybody has to like something. Some people like to eat, some people like to drink, some people like to make money, and I like seeing painted pictures.
They went to Volard's, the only picture dealer who had Cezanne's for sale, to look at them. His shop was on the Rue Lafitte. In the center of the room was a huge, dark man, glooming. This was Vollard, cheerful. They asked to see Cezanne's. He looked less gloomy and became quite polite. As they found out afterward, the name Cezanne was to him a magic name. They bought a wonderful small landscape and 2 tiny canvases of nude groups. Later on, Vollard explained to everyone that he had been visited by 2 crazy Americans, and they laughed, and he had been much annoyed, but gradually he found out that when they laughed most, they usually bought something. From that time on, they went to Vollard's all the time. They found 2 little Renoirs. They bought 2 Gauguins. Gertrude Stein liked the sunflowers, but not the figures. They frequently bought in 2s because one of them usually liked one more than the other did.
We were in Paris together, and we were always together. My brother and myself had always been together. One should always be the youngest member of the family. It saves you a lot of bother. Everyone takes care of you. It's better, if you're the youngest girl in the family, to have a brother 2 years older, because that makes everything a pleasure to you. You go everywhere and do everything, while he does it all for you and with you. And so I was a little girl in Oakland, California. And of course, one did have to find out that stars were worlds and moved around, and that there was wind and rain, grass and flowers. But most of all, there were books and food. Food and books. When I went to school, all the children had to write once a week how they had lent a hand. Most of them had an easy time. They could mind the baby, or cut wood, or help their mother. Nobody wanted us to do these things, and I and my brother, who spent our time at home mostly eating fruit and reading books, never could remember how we had lent a hand. Is life worth living? Yes, 1,000 times yes, when the world still holds such spirits as Professor James. He is truly a man among men.
And so Gertrude Stein went to Radcliffe. She enjoyed her life and herself, but the important person in her Radcliffe life was William James.
A scientist of force and originality, he stands firmly, nobly for the dignity of man.
William James delighted her. Keep your mind open, he used to say.
I was, of course, very interested in psychology. One of the things I did was testing reactions of the average college student. I was supposed to be interested in their reactions, but soon I found I was not. But instead that I was enormously interested in the types of their characters, the bottom nature of them. I came to feel that I could come some time to describe every kind there is of men and women and the bottom nature of them, and the way it's mixed up with their other natures.
It was a lovely spring day, and it was the period of the final examinations, and there was the examination in William James's course. She sat down with the examination paper before her, and she just could not. "Dear Professor James," she wrote at the top of her paper, "I am so sorry, but really I do not feel a bit like an examination paper in philosophy today," and left.
Dear Miss Stein, I understand perfectly how you feel. I often feel like that myself.
He gave her work the highest mark in his course. For psychology, you must have a medical education. These first 2 years of the medical school, Gertrude Stein liked well enough. She had to take her turn delivering babies. And it was at that time that she noticed the Negroes and the places that she afterwards used in her story that was the beginning of her revolutionary work. Melanctha in 3 Lives. The last 2 years at medical school, she was bored. Frankly and openly bored. The practice and theory of medicine didn't interest her at all. One of the professors said he intended that she should be given a lesson, and he refused to give her a pass mark, and so she was not able to take her degree.
Of course, Miss Stein, all you have to do is take a summer course here, and in the fall, naturally, you will take your degree.
But not at all, Professor. You have no idea how grateful I am. You don't know how little I like pathological psychology and how all medicine bores me.
But Gertrude, remember the cause of women.
You don't know what it is to be bored.
And that was the end of the medical education of Gertrude Stein. Before the winter was over, Gertrude Stein and her brother decided to buy a big Cezanne. They'd chose the portrait of a woman. Gertrude Stein said to Vollard, "Now the picture is ours." They might have been ransoming someone they loved.
Cezanne conceived the idea that in composition, one thing was as important as another thing. Each part is as important as the whole, and that impressed me enormously. And it impressed me so much that I began to write under this influence and this idea of composition. It was the first time in any language that anyone had used this idea of composition in literature.
In looking and looking at this picture, Gertrude Stein wrote 3 lives.
With this book, I destroyed 19th century literature.
You certainly never have forgiven to me what I said to you that night. Now have you, Jeff?
It ain't ever a question like forgiving Melanctha I got in me. It's just only what she feeling for me that makes a difference to me.
I certainly never did see no man like you, Jeff. You're always wanting to have it all clear out in words always, what everybody is always feeling. And I certainly don't see no reason why I should always be explaining to you what I mean by what I'm just saying. And you ain't got no feeling for me ever. to ask me what I meant by what I was saying when I was so tired that night. I never know anything right I was saying.
But you don't ever tell me now, Melinda. So I really hear you say it. You don't mean it the way you said it to me.
Oh, Jeff, you so stupid always to me. And always just bothering what you're always asking to me. And I don't never, anyway, ever remember anything I've been saying to you. And always, my head, so it hurts me, it half kills me. And my heart jumps so sometimes I think I die so when it hurts me. And I am so blue always. I think sometimes I take something to just kill me. And I got so much to bother thinking always and doing. And I got so much to worry and all that. And then you come here to ask me what I mean by what I was just saying to you? Well, I certainly don't know, Jeff, when you ask me. Seems to me, Jeff, sometimes you might have some kind of a right feeling to be careful to me.
Now, you ain't got no right, Melinda Herbert. You certainly ain't got no right always to be using your being hurt and being sick and having pain like a weapon so it's to make me do things that ain't never right for me to be doing for you. You certainly ain't got no right to be always holding your pain out to show me.
What do you mean by them words, Jeff Campbell?
I certainly mean them just like I'm saying them. I ain't no coward, you hear me, Melinda? I never put my trouble back on anybody thinking that they made me. But I tell you straight now, the way I think it, Melinda, I ain't going to be as if I was the reason why you wanted me to be loving and to be suffering so now with me.
Did I ever do anything but just let you do everything you wanted to me? Did I ever try to make you be loving to me? Did I ever do nothing except just sit there, ready to endure your loving with me? But I certainly never, Jeff Campbell, did make any kind of way as if I wanted really to be having you for me.
So that's the way you say it when you're thinking right out about it, Melinda. Well, I certainly ain't got a word to say ever to you anymore, Melinda, if that's the way it's straight out to you now, Melinda.
Oh, I certainly shall go crazy now. I certainly know that.
Gertrude Stein's story, Melanchthon, got inside the characters and the rhythm of their speech for the first time. I want to say frankly that I think you have written a very peculiar book, and it will be a hard thing to make people take it seriously. We hardly see our way clear to making you any offer of publication. The book is too unconventional.
I need you there. Do not despair. Remain in a circle and do not despair.
Matisse had had a hard time. He spent the winter painting a very large picture with a magnificent dish of fruit. It was finished at last and sent to the salon, and there it was refused. Matisse and some rebels from the old salon had created the autumn salon. There were a number of attractive pictures, but there was one that was very strange in its color and its anatomy. The picture infuriated the public. They tried to scratch off the paint. Matisse at this time was about 35 years old. Having gone to the opening day of the salon and seen what they were trying to do to it, he never went again. He stayed at home and was unhappy. And now Matisse's serious troubles began. He was in an agonizing mental struggle concerning his work.
One was quite certain that for a long part of his being, one being living, he had been trying to be certain that he was wrong in doing what he was doing. And then when he could not come to be certain that he had been wrong in doing what he'd been doing, when he had completely convinced himself that he was not wrong in doing what he had been doing, he was really certain then that he was a great one. And he certainly was a great one. Certainly he was expressing something being struggling. Some were certain that he was greatly expressing this thing.
People were roaring with laughter at the picture. Gertrude Stein could not understand why. The picture seemed to her perfectly natural. It upset her to see them all mocking at it. She said she wanted to buy it. It was derided and attacked, and it was sold. Little by little, people began to come to the Rue de Fleurus to see the Matisses and the Cezannes. Matisse brought people. Everybody brought people. And it began to be a nuisance. And it was in this way that Saturday evening began. It was also at this time that Gertrude Stein got into the habit of writing at night. It was only after 11 o'clock that she could be sure no one would knock at the studio door. Gertrude Stein did not like the picture. She found something in the drawing of the legs and feet that repelled and shocked her. The art dealer said, "But that is all right. If you do not like the legs and feet, it is very easy to guillotine her and only take the head." Her brother wanted it, and she did not want it in the house. The price asked was $30. It was very cheap. Finally, it was agreed that since he wanted it so badly, they would buy it. In this way, the first Picasso was brought into Rue de Fleurus. Picasso and Fernand came to dinner. Picasso was thin, dark, alive, his eyes having a strange faculty of opening wide and drinking in what he wished to see. That evening, Gertrude Stein's brother took out portfolio after portfolio of Japanese prints to show Picasso. Picasso solemnly and obediently looked at print after print. He said under his breath to Gertrude Stein, "He is very nice, your brother, but like all Americans, he shows you Japanese prints. I don't like that." Gertrude Stein and Pablo Picasso immediately understood each other.
Well, my impression is very simple. It is that the great man of the family was Gertrude Stein and not Leo. Leo, who was a pedant, and was a pedant besides, who changed direction constantly. One moment in psychoanalysis, then after in something else. Oh no, the great man, the genius, and she wrote that she was a genius. She really was a genius. Gertrude.
Every afternoon, Gertrude Stein mounted on top of an omnibus. The old horse-pulled omnibuses that went across Paris and up the hill to Montmartre.
Why did Picasso wish to have a model before him at this time? This I really do not know.
She got out and climbed steeply, in fact, straight up, and came to the Rue Ravignon, with its steps leading up the little flat square, with its few but tender little trees, and to the left, the low wooden building of studios that is still there. Le Bateau Lavoie, the heart of an art movement of which the outside world at that time knew nothing.
The Bateau Lavoie had once been, it seems, a piano factory. A green building made of wood and which had been converted into studios, and at some point where many painters lived. Picasso, Van Gries, Van Dangen, Max Jacob. Well, there was one water faucet for about 28 studios. One sole toilet, of course. All that was so poor and full of bugs. A miserable place.
Gertrude Stein knocked, and Picasso opened the door.
His eyes were even more wonderful than I remembered.
Picasso had never had anyone pose for him since he was 16 years old. He was then 24. And they do not either of them know how it came about. Anyway, it did, and she took her pose. Picasso sat very tight on his chair and very close to his canvas, and on a very small palette mixed some brown gray, and the painting began.
I posed for him all that winter, 80 times.
During these long poses, they talked about everything. About pictures, about dogs, about death.
Oh, Pablo, I forgot to give you these.
Fernand, who was then living with Picasso, offered to read the Fables of La Fontaine aloud to Gertrude Stein. Fernand had been with him for a long time. Spring was coming, and the sittings were coming to an end. All of a sudden, one day, Picasso painted out the whole head. "I can't see you any longer when I look," he said irritably. And so the picture was left like that. Picasso went to Spain. The day he returned from Spain, Picasso sat down and out of his head painted the head in, without having seen Gertrude Stein again. When she saw it, he and she were content.
For me, it is I, and it is the only reproduction of me which is always I for me.
In the long struggle with the portrait of Gertrude Stein, Picasso passed from the Harlequin or Rose period to the intensive struggle which was to end in Cubism.
This one was one who was working. This one was one having something being coming out of him. Something had been coming out of him. Certainly it was something. Certainly it had been coming out of him. Certainly it was something. Certainly it had been coming out of him, and it had meaning, a charming meaning, a solid meaning, a struggling meaning, a clear meaning. This one was one who was working.
I opened my first gallery, which was then a very small shop, barely 16 by 16, with a little back room in the spring of 1907. Gertrude came often to the Rue Vignon. As to Picasso, I had heard that he was painting a very strange picture. The person in question said something Assyrian-looking. Well, that interested me, and I wanted to see it. It is then, in fact, that I went up to Picasso's place and that I saw the Demoiselle d'Avignon. It filled the whole of this very little, small room, which was his studio.
Even Picasso's friends were not prepared for this. Chouquin said Picasso must have gone crazy. Braque told him, "It's as though you wanted to make us eat rope and drink gasoline." The sculptor Manolo said, "What would you say if your father and your mother waited for you at the station at Barcelona with a face like that?" And Derain predicted, "Someday they'll find Picasso hanged behind that picture." Chouquin almost wept. What a loss for French art. As Picasso once said, the one who creates a thing is forced to make it ugly. Those who follow can make this thing a beautiful thing because they know in advance what they're doing. On all the walls right up to the ceiling were pictures. The pictures were so strange. It is very difficult, now that everybody is accustomed to everything, to give some idea of the uneasiness one felt when one first looked at all these pictures. I was confused. I looked, and I was confused.
Alice B. Toklas came from San Francisco.
In Paris, I went to see Gertrude Stein's older brother Michael and his wife Sarah, and there at their house I met Gertrude Stein. I have met many important people. I have met several great people. But only 3 times in my life have I met a genius. And each time a bell within me rang, and I was not mistaken. In this way, my new full life began. I had been invited to the Rue de Fleurus on Saturday evening, which was the evening when everybody came, and indeed everybody did come. "Ah, the Miss Toklas," Picasso said, "with small feet like a Spanish woman and earrings like a gypsy." Miss Stein sat near the stove in a lovely high-backed chair. I murmured to Picasso that I liked his portrait of Gertrude Stein. "Yes," he said, "everybody says that she does not look like it, but that does not make any difference. She will." Gertrude Stein then asked me to sit with Fernand. Fernand had 2 subjects, hats and perfumes. She had the true French feeling about a hat. If a hat did not provoke some witticism from a man on the street, the hat was not a success. Leo couldn't leave the slightest subject without critical analysis. The slightest flaw in his companion's statement caused in him intellectual indignation of the most intense kind. Hélène was one of those admirable maids, a most excellent cook. Hélène did not like Matisse. She said a Frenchman should not stay unexpectedly to a meal, particularly if he asked the servant beforehand what there was for dinner. Delaunay was the founder of the school of painting houses out of plumb, what Gertrude Stein called the catastrophe school. Delaunay would always ask, "How old was Picasso when he painted that? When I am that age, I will be able to paint as well." Marie Laurencin painted a strange picture. Portraits of Guillaume, Picasso, Fernand, and herself. Gertrude Stein bought it, and Marie Laurencin was so pleased. It was the first picture of hers anyone had bought. Braque used to hold up the big pictures to hang because he was the strongest. It was in these days the intimacy between Braque and Picasso grew. Braque and Derain had gone Montmartre. From Matisse'ites, they had become followers of Picasso. The poet Guillaume Apollinaire was extraordinarily brilliant. He wrote the first little pamphlet about them all. Guillaume by Picasso as example of what physical culture could do. Guillaume as a coffee pot. Picasso was more than ever the little bullfighter followed by his squadron, or Napoleon followed by his grenadiers. Picasso was every inch a chief.
If I told him, would he like it? Would he like it if I told him? Would he like it? Would Napoleon, would he like it? If Napoleon, if I told him, if Napoleon, would he like it if I told him, if Napoleon?
Picasso asked me, do you think that I really look like your President Lincoln? I had thought a good many things that evening, but I had not thought that. And so, one of the most important evenings of my life came to an end. Gertrude Stein was working tremendously. Working every night, she was often caught by the dawn coming.
I was writing the way I was writing, and it came to be the writing of the making of Americans.
The making of Americans had changed from being a history of a family to being a history of everybody the family knew.
I had the idea of describing everyone who could or would or had been living, watching people from windows and so on, until I could put down every type of human being that could be on the earth. I wanted to realize every variety of human experience, every type, every nuance. I made endless diagrams of every human being. I went on and on to 1,000 pages of it. I did not show what I was doing to my brother. He looked at it and he did not say anything. Repeating is what I am loving. There are many that I know, and they know it. They are all of them repeating, and I hear it. I love it, and now I will write it. This is now a history of my love of it. I hear it, and I love it, and I write it. They repeat it. They live it, and I see it, and I hear it. They live it, and I hear it, and I see it, and I love it, and now and always I will write it.
When Jesus said, "Verily, verily," the second verily added to the expression. But if he had said, "Verily, verily, 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 verily," it wouldn't have been so good.
I worked over it for 3 years.
A lot of Tommy rot.
Disillusionment in living is finding that no one can ever really be agreeing with you completely in anything. So you say, I will write for myself and strangers.
Gertrude's writing and Picasso's painting, absolute rubbish.
It destroyed him for me, and it destroyed me for him.
I joined Gertrude Stein in the Rue de Fleurus.
One day I asked her brother Leo. I was seeing him at her home when and for a long time I didn't see him. So I said, what happened to Leo? I don't see him anymore here. I said, that's a family story. So I pushed her a little bit. I was curious to know what is it. She said, you see, when we were children, Leo passed to be the genius of the house. Well, life showed that's not him, it's me. So he's not very happy about it. Like that.
You write a book, and while you write it, you're ashamed, for everyone must think you're a silly or a crazy one, and yet you write it. You have a queer feeling, and you're not very certain, and you go on writing. Then someone says yes to it, and then never again can you have completely such a feeling of being afraid and ashamed that you had.
One Sunday evening, I called Gertrude Stein to come in from the atelier for supper.
No, you have to read this first.
I can still see the little tiny pages of the notebook. It was the first portrait she ever wrote, the portrait called Ada.
Ada was then one, and all her living then one, completely telling stories that were charming, completely listening to stories having a beginning and a middle and an ending. Trembling was all living, living was all loving. Someone was then the other one. Certainly this one was loving, this Ada then. And certainly Ada, all her living then, was happier in living than anyone else who ever could, who was, who is, who ever will be living.
Gertrude Stein always says that I am impartial on every subject except that of Spain. It was there and at that time, this was 1914, that Gertrude Stein's style gradually changed.
Hitherto I'd been interested only in the insides of people, their character and what went on inside them. It was during that summer that I first felt a desire to express the rhythm of the visible world.
Here she wrote the things that led up to Tender Buttons.
Oh, I went to her house with George Antile one evening. I'd been reading the writing for 5 or 6 years.
But I remember in Harvard in 1921, you read me some Tender Buttons. I said to you at that time, you should put this to music.
It revealed to me to put to music anything that had no clear meaning, because then there was no temptation to illustrate the birdie babbling by the brook. You could set it for its clear value of English words. The very first one I did was begin sweet, 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 sweet tea. Susie Asado. Then there was another one called Preciosa, the portrait of a Spanish dancer turned out to be. Please be, get, please get set, please get wet, wet naturally, naturally in weather. And that amounts to a great climax where she says, diamonds bright, diamonds white, diamonds in the light.
Diamonds white, diamonds bright, diamonds in the light, diamonds light, diamonds door, diamonds hanging to before, to for, all before, this bean, Leslie, almost, a green guest, go, 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 not guest, go, go, toasted Susie is my ice cream.
Great fun.
Oh, they're marvelous.
No, it was fun. I carried the little book around, used to read it aloud to all my friends. But everybody else did that with Tender Buttons.
Yes, what's wrong with laughter? Very high-class nonsense.
Alas, a dirty bird, how does it go? No.
No, I don't remember at all. Not a line, thank goodness.
Alas, a dirty word.
Alas, a dirty third.
Yes.
That was chicken.
Yes.
Alas, a dirty word, alas, a dirty third, alas, a dirty third, alas, a dirty bird. A cup is neglected by being full of sighs. It shows no shade. In come little woodcuts and blessing not at all so polite, not nearly so behind. Why is a cup astir and a behave? Why is it so seen? I was trying to name objects without using their names.
She was laying word against word, relating sound to sound, feeling for the taste, the smell, the rhythm of the individual word.
Elephant beaten with candy and little pops and shoes, all bolts and reckless, reckless rats. This is this.
If this is literature or anything other than stupidity worse than madness, then alas for literature.
The newspapers started their long campaign of ridicule. She could not understand why. Since the writing was also clear and natural, they were enraged by her work.
Just read the words on the paper. They're in English. Just read them.
Grotesque. One works with words, and one would like words that have a taste on the lips, that have a perfume in the nostrils, rattling words to throw into a box and shake, making a sharp, jingling sound, words that when seen on the printed page have a distinct, arresting effect upon the eye. I think that these words of Gertrude Stein's do in a very real sense recreate life in such words.
A very Valentine for Sherwood Anderson. Very fine is my Valentine, very fine and very mine. Very mine is my Valentine, very mine and very fine. Very fine is my Valentine and mine. Very fine, very mine and mine is my Valentine.
If Picasso is applauded for painting pictures which do not represent anything, if Schoenberg can pen a score that sounds entirely new, why should an employer of English words be required to form sentences which are familiar in meaning, shape, and sound? I've always been convinced that it was the same state of mind in Cubism and in the literature of Gertrude Stein. Yes, I am convinced of it. Cubism tried to give a representation of the exterior world, which is no longer an imitation. And the literature of Gertrude, in a certain sense, is, in my opinion, the same thing.
A carafe that is a blind glass. A kind in glass and a cousin a spectacle, and nothing strange, a single hurt color, and an arrangement and a system to pointing. The difference is spreading.
Like the Cubists, they always chose very simple objects to start with. Gertrude always took simple words also. It was no longer a question of a connected story, but of a free invention made of words.
The thing was that our generation became not satisfied. We were on a kind of a crossroad. And what we wanted is to make an art where imagination, human imagination, not fantasy, imagination, plays a role. And we took the road of imagination.
I was the only one who understood Picasso at that time, because I was expressing the same thing in literature.
And one day, she said to me, "Of course, Jacques, you don't know English literature. But after all, besides Shakespeare and me, whom do you see?" Just like that. Not just like that, like. I said, "Gertrude, would you like to pose for me for a portrait?" "Oh," she said, "I would be delighted." She was not interested in sculpture at all, not at all. And I have to confess that I wanted to interested in sculpture, you know. I don't think that I succeeded. But we became very good friends, you know, very, very good friends. At that time, when she was, you know, like a Buddha.
Lipschitz was an excellent gossip. He was able to supply several missing parts of several stories.
We were gossiping together. It was marvelous. It was very gay, you know, when she posed for me, very gay. And she was always a good friend for me, always. But I couldn't convert her to like sculpture.
Sculpture always has the bother that one can go all around it. And the material of which it is made gives an impression of form before the sculptor has worked on it.
Yes, I think she liked it. Yes, I think she liked it.
Dear Mademoiselle, we are in the trenches and we are attacking just now. The cannons fire a good deal, but I am used to that. Thank you very much for the warm clothing. We shall not forget all that you have done for us. Your godson, Abel Leglay.
We decided to get into the war. American Fund for French Wounded. That is what we are going to do. You will drive the car and I will do the rest. Our little Ford was called Auntie, after Gertrude Stein's Aunt Pauline, who always behaved admirably in emergencies. The roads were frightful. Mud, ruts, snow, slush. We went into all the devastated villages. We drove by day and we drove by night, visiting hospitals and giving away our stores. We were the first to bring the news of the armistice to many small villages. I remember one of the French soldiers in the hospital. "Well, here is peace," I said to him. "At least for 20 years," he said.
Madame, we have been requested by the French government to transmit to you the Médaille de la Reconnaissance Française.
The night of the armistice, Guillaume Apollinaire died. Guillaume always had a quality of keeping people together. And now that he was gone, everyone ceased to be friends. We returned to a changed Paris. Braque and Picasso were on the outs. Matisse had moved to the south of France. The old crowd had disappeared.
December 3rd, 1921. Dear Miss Stein, I am writing this note to make you acquainted with my friend, Ernest Hemingway, who, with Mrs. Hemingway, is going to Paris to live. Mr. Hemingway is an American writer, and I know you will find Mr. and Mrs. Hemingway delightful people to know. Sherwood Anderson.
I remember well the impression I had of Hemingway that first afternoon. He was an extraordinarily good-looking young man.
There was a big fireplace, and it was warm and comfortable, and they gave you good things to eat and tea and natural distilled liqueurs made from yellow plums or wild raspberries.
He was 23 with passionately interested eyes.
He sat in front of Gertrude Stein and listened and looked.
Gertrude Stein was about 48. She had beautiful dark eyes and alive immigrant hair. She talked like an angel.
They talked then and more. He asked her to come and look at his work. His first apartment was in Montmartre. He and Gertrude Stein went over all the writing he had done.
Begin over and concentrate. Let nothing else get in but that clear vision which you are alone with. If you have an audience, it's not art. If anyone hears you, it's not pure. Remarks are not literature.
And I guess when Hemingway met Stein, she kind of purged his writing of the extra adjective, of the pretense, worked him down to the essential, to the emotion itself, as if it were practically naked on the page. But with Stein, that nakedness had its own beauty. You know, that line, "Only Euclid looked on beauty bare." Well, Stein's stripped-down prose had that kind of beauty. So Hemingway once said, you know, that he had two teachers, Ezra Pound and Gertrude Stein. And Ezra Pound was occasionally right. Gertrude was always right.
He came to the house about 10 o'clock in the morning, and he stayed. He stayed for lunch, he stayed for dinner, and he stayed till about 10 o'clock at night.
Isn't writing a hard job, though? It used to be easy before I met you.
There's one theory, if I may boldly express it, that Hemingway rather fell in love with this older woman. He was a boy, you know, a very handsome boy, a young man of about 22, and he fell in love. Or he wanted to make love. That's his own expression. This is really the truth. He wanted to make love to Gertrude Stein. It's one way to win, isn't it? I sound like a women's liberation movement, but one way to win in an argument with a woman is to make love to her. And not that they were arguing, but she was the dominant figure. And there's the supposition that perhaps Alice resented it and broke off their affair.
When she went out for a walk, I used to say, "Don't you come home with Hemingway on your arm." She did.
Well, she was interested in writing first and foremost. And she asked, of course, Hemingway to come and see her, which he did. But he was a heavy load, and always has been. He was heavy, shapeless, and not prepossessing at all. He always had an open shirt, you know, Lacoste, you know. He was very airy. And he had feet, enormous feet, like two dreadnoughts, you know. And he would sit he would sit over there or in my other house like this, you know, with his feet up, you know. So I was supposed to give him a drink, and there were other people there. I thought, what a show of yourself. And he wore those heavy mountain shoes with nails, which he insisted on wearing in a salon. Well, I thought the whole thing was kind of a voluntary preposterous. You see, I thought it was preposterous. So once I nearly stumbled over his feet. So I said to him, take your feet in. One day you will write with them, I said. Well, he nearly came to doing it, to my mind.
Yes, I know. But I have a weakness for Hemingway.
The Making of Americans, her first major novel, which incidentally Hemingway typed in the first 50 pages or so. It probably had the greatest influence on his own writing.
It was Hemingway who first caused to be printed a piece of The Making of Americans in Transatlantic.
And Hemingway said the thing that must be done is to get Stein into print finally, not just talk about Stein, but read her. She was one of the most talked about and unread figures of her time at that time.
She was writing so uncommon, so unusual a language. What she wrote was really an experiment. You see, not the ordinary writing. And that's why publishers didn't see their way. They felt immediately it wouldn't be popular, obviously. She printed herself. She had it done, and they are very charming books. And then, of course, the happy days, the 20s, all the Americans were here, you see, settling. And it was a meeting place of a marvelous generation. She knew all these Americans and Frenchmen of the period, and they knew they could go there on Saturday. And you went there after dinner, you went and you saw friends, and you talked with Gertrude, who sometimes would be very talkative, sometimes wouldn't.
It was really interesting. It was a warm, interesting atmosphere, somehow creative, very interesting.
When I was a young poet, surely I went very often to Gertrude's. And when she gave little receptions at home, but they were never late evenings, and they were very proper evenings. There was no fooling around there.
You know, probably she had a certain attraction, a nervous attraction, you know, some kind of a point, a focus.
There were always excellent little cakes, but one must like that. These were made by Alice Toklas.
Alice was always a little offstage.
Well, Alice was always taking care of the people that Gertrude didn't want to talk to.
Yes, they were numerous.
Yes.
Yes,
But
I always sat with Alice because she had such good sandwiches. They were first class.
Oh, but the food was always good.
Yes, remarkable at the tea party. And such good Chinese tea.
That's right. That's right. It was tea, yes. That's right. Yes, cookies.
Anyway, it was not for little cakes that I went to her place. And when you had passed an evening at Gertrude's, you all found each other, more or less, at the bar of the Coupole. And there, you had a good time.
Oh, her laughter was the most warming, the most genial. It was an enchantment. It warmed the whole atmosphere. It was the heat of mirth. It was lovely, lovely. Alice cackled a little bit and giggled, perhaps maliciously, from one side.
You know, there were several little chairs, charming little chairs, which Alice made, a petit point, you know, tapestry, and they were designed by Picasso, who made the drawing and decided the colors.
Ezra Pound fell out of Gertrude Stein's favorite little armchair, and Gertrude Stein was furious.
I do not find Ezra Pound amusing. He is a village explainer. Oh, excellent if you're a village, but if you're not, not.
There was a review of Gertrude Stein's book, Geography and Plays, signed Edith Sitwell. Gertrude Stein had not cared for it.
The three Sitwells have among them enough genius for one English literary man.
A year later, Edith Sitwell wrote what an important and beautiful book she had found it to be. She and Gertrude Stein became friends at once. T.S. Eliot said that if he printed anything of Gertrude Stein's in his magazine, The Criterion, it would have to be her very latest thing. She began to write a portrait of T.S. Eliot and called it the 15th of November, that being this day, and so there could be no doubt but this was her latest thing.
And she was a very difficult woman when she got cross, and she did get cross very quickly because she was impatient by nature.
Ulysses is a most goddamn wonderful book. But if you mention Joyce more than once, you would not be invited back.
Joyce is an incomprehensible that anyone can understand.
Ezra Pound met Gertrude Stein in the Luxembourg Gardens.
But I want to come up and see you.
I'm sorry, but at this season, Miss Toklas and I are very busy picking wildflowers.
But all of a sudden, she got tired or she wouldn't stand something, and then you could expect almost anything.
Oh, hell, I'm fairly well known for saying things about anyone and anything. I say them about people, I say them to people, I say them when I please and how I please. It is hard living down the tempers we are born with.
Well, then she got into trouble with Hemingway. She put him out one night. I was there with my husband and many other people, and he was drunk. It was Rue de Fleurus, and he walked up and to her, and she looked at him and she said, Hem, you are drunk. You turn around and never come again. So Hem turned around and went out. Well, next same evening, she called me up. About 2 o'clock at night, that was normal. I want to talk to Mr. Bradley. I said, I'm very sorry, for once my husband is sleeping. He was a very bad sleeper, so I'm not going to wake him. Well, she said, it's softly, it's urgent, it's absolutely urgent. Well, I said, you can telephone early in the morning, Miss Stein, but I'm not going to wake him. So she turned off, and by 5 o'clock, she probably was at the phone again. She said, Bradley, what have I done yesterday? That was just like her, you see. What have I done? You must get Hemingway back at any price. Well, when my husband asked Hemingway, would he come again, he said no, of course.
Sherwood Anderson wrote a book so silly I couldn't help parodying it in Torrents of Spring. She couldn't forgive that. I had attacked someone who was part of her apparatus.
Newspaper people never become writers.
He is a rotten pupil.
The young, when they've learned all they can learn, accuse me of inordinate pride. I admit it, of course. I realize that in English literature, in my time, I'm the only one.
She never could write dialogue. She learned how to do it from my stuff. She could never forgive learning that.
Hemingway, you're 90% Rotarian.
Could you make it 80%?
No, I'm sorry, I can't.
All that talent gone to malice and nonsense. Salon woman. What a lousy, stinking life.
He is obsessed by sex and violent death. You can tell by the way a man talks about sex whether he's impotent or not. And if he talks about nothing else, you can be quite sure he is impotent. Physically and as an artist, too.
A rose is an onion.
Well, I think that he had the Nobel Prize. And that Thornton Wilder hasn't.
Messages are received all the time, in quarreling, in shooting, in destroying, all the time. Messages, he was a disappointment to me, are received, I could not understand, all the time, the reason for the waiting, all the time. Messa, he was a disappointment to me, jazz, Ari, I could not understand, seed, all for the reason for the waiting time, all the time. Honeysuckle grows, honeysuckle grows. Can you sing together? Messages are received all the time, messages.
In the
All the time. 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 All the time.
Lucy Church amiably. There is a church, and it is in Lucy, and it has a steeple, and the steeple is a pagoda, and there's no reason for it, and it looks like something else. Select your song, she said, and it was done with a nod, and then she bent her head in the direction of the falling water, amiably.
One day we saw the house of our dreams across the valley.
Alice, go and ask the farmer whose house that is.
Nonsense. It is an important house, and it is occupied.
Go and ask him.
I did.
She got Bilignin by one of her typical, outrageous Gertrude Stein maneuvers. They discovered it was owned by a colonel in the French army, and he was assigned to a post about 5 miles from Bilignin. And he had been a colonel for about 15 years, and he didn't want to be promoted because he was so happy in this home. He was all set for life. Well, Gertrude decided this was the place she wanted, so she went back to Paris and raised hell with the military in France that this fellow hadn't been promoted in 15 years. So they made him a general, and of course he was transferred at once. And in a rage, he had to move away, and Gertrude bought Bilignin from him.
They had no idea what it was like inside, and of course it's a beautiful Louis XIII manoir, and with wall paintings and beautiful fireplaces and floors, parquet floors. The terrace hasn't changed at all because these borders of boxwood were always here. They've been there for centuries. I guess it takes a long time to grow that. And it smells so good. And then the 3 towers, the middle one of which has little tables and things in it, and you could keep chairs. We used to keep chairs there. But Gertrude would lean out the window in the morning. She would also come down and walk herself with an old bathrobe fastened with a large safety pin and look around to see who she could annoy or bother or, you know. Gertrude never did any work. Alice ran the house on the principle that Gertrude must never be annoyed, displeased, or disciplined. Gertrude used to lie back in a sort of a folding chair, you know, like a deck chair thing. She liked to do that. Gertrude would fool around all day and have company, write notes, until the moment occurred when she wanted to write. But she kept herself ready to write. Alice made like the Lady Gentile, and there was a cutting garden of flowers and vegetables over there, and would cut roses and things, you know.
Did Gertrude do any work in the garden?
Gertrude never did any work anywhere except her own. She wouldn't even wash the dog.
There was one Gertrude. And in her full shapeliness, well, you know what she looked like? I consider Gertrude, especially after her hair was cut, of course, a very handsome head. She was a listener. While she listened, though, she was making up her own mind on what you were saying or what a reaction to that would be. She was not a person who was scattered in any way. She was her own province. Alice was cautious, reflective, and creative, and rather malicious. Gertrude could be destructive, but malice was not her gift. Alice had a gift for it. I expect that Alice, who was known as the executioner, she would arrange for a kind of disappearance. I don't know how she did this exactly.
Toklas's contribution to Stein was an essential one. She was not only a secretary, but she was, well, I may shock somebody, but there was a point of co-authorship. The relationship between Stein and Toklas was one of the richest that I've ever known.
I think there was a real contribution there of a certain nature, of course, which would not that Alice had any great influence on the way she wrote, but in many other ways, on the observation psychologically, she certainly showed the way very often without doing so. She was extremely smart, extremely.
If a magpie in the sky, on the sky cannot cry, if the pigeon on the grass, alas, can alas, and to pass the pigeon on the grass, alas, and the magpie in the sky, on the sky, and to try, alas, on the grass, alas, the pigeon on the grass, the pigeon on the grass, and alas.
Now, that was very good, except that I think I started you off a little fast. After all, it is a vision of the Holy Ghost, and St. Ignatius is meditating in wonderment at just what he has seen. So about like this, I should say. Pigeons on the grass, alas.
So I proposed to Gertrude she'd write me a libretto for an opera, and we sat together choosing a subject, and then she did. That's the Four Saints was the first of the operas. And we chose the subject together. But now, what kind of mythological subject should we choose? Well, we thought we wouldn't bother with Greek mythology. The Duncan family had kind of monopolized that. And Wagner had already done more with Scandinavian than anybody had any right to attempt in our century. But then we said, of course, history can be considered as mythology. Fine, says Gertrude. What about George Washington? No, says I, because that's 18th century, and in the 18th century, they all wore the same kind of clothes, and they all look alike on a stage. You can't tell one from another. Well, what about the lives of the saints? That, I said, is pure mythology. That's just fine. So we looked around for saints, but Spanish saints, says Gertrude. Oh, yes, fine, says I. Now, she knew a great deal more about Spain than I did. I'd never been to Spain. And she'd become, as you might say, very intimate with St. Teresa from living at Avila. And so she decided that would be just fine. And I said, it's all fine by me. Then she went ahead and wrote her libretto like that, putting these Spanish saints in the Spanish landscape that she knew so well and loved so well.
Act 4.
Supposing a wheel had been added to 3 wheels, how many acts, how many acts are there in it?
Any saint at all.
How many acts are there in it?
How many saints in all?
How many acts are there in it?
Ring around a rosy.
How many acts are there in it?
Wedded and weeded.
Please be coming to see me.
When this you see, you are all to me. Me, which is you. You who are true. True to be you.
How many saints are there in it?
1, 2, 3, 4, and there is no door or more, or door or door.
1, 2, 3, all out but me.
And afterwards, I put it to music, and since I didn't know Spain, the music came out to be virtually a total recall of my Southern Baptist upbringing in Missouri.
belongs to Saint Teresa.
How many had been told? 20 have been there as well.
The opera was finished the summer of 28. No production until 1934, when it was produced first in Hartford and then in New York, and later that fall in Chicago. That was what is referred to as the original production, with the cellophane scenery and the Negro cast and so forth.
Planting it green means that it is protected from the sun and from the wind and the sun. And she never knew about it. And she never knew about it. And they never knew about it.
I think it was the first time that an American theatrical production had used Negro artists for playing non-Negro parts.
Think that they can leave it here to me.
When this you say, remember me, they have to be, they have to be, they have to be to see, to see. Naturally they may. Scene 5.
The public reaction was virtually always the same. They would start by laughing and giggling, and by the end of 10 minutes, they were not giggling anymore. They were listening avidly. And always, the audiences for that work have complained bitterly if they did not understand every word.
If there had not been a beautiful dry October in Bilignin in France in 1932, would the autobiography of Alice B. Toklas have been written? I suggested to my secretary, Alice B. Toklas, that she write her life story, and she kept putting it off. Finally, to encourage her one day, I sat down in the garden and wrote a chapter. Then it seized me. So I kept on writing and writing, and I wrote the whole autobiography in 6 weeks.
Alice had always promised to write an autobiography and hadn't, so here she was doing it for her.
Also, Gertrude, at that point, wanted to write a book of memoirs. And she found the gimmick, the device, describing her life as Alice saw it, so that she began by saying that Gertrude Stein was one of the 3 geniuses she had ever met. Gertrude could say that of herself. In Alice's person, she couldn't write it herself.
We were then in very close contact with Gertrude, and she sent us in her script of every chapter written. So my husband and myself read it, and we simply were enchanted with the book. And when the book was completed, my husband said, now she must be known for that and have a good publisher. And that was her first success, really, in the States.
Gertrude Stein has the clearest intelligence I have ever encountered. Her influence on American writing, so much greater than is known or conceded.
After that, it was easy. Then everybody wanted 3 lives, etc. But before that, nothing.
I had never made any money before in my life, and I was most excited. I bought myself a new 8-cylinder Ford car, and the most expensive coat made to order for Basket, the white poodle, and 2 collars, studded.
The painters were angry because Gertrude claimed that nobody was really any good except Picasso. The autobiography of Alice B. Toklas is the lowest literary prostitution. For one who poses as an authority on the subject of art, it is clear Gertrude Stein never went beyond the stage of the tourist. Two maiden ladies greedy for fame and publicity. A clinical case of megalomania. She never understood anything. Gertrude really lived in her own world, and not in the real world. Her imagination created a world, and she remained in that world.
Well, anyway, my success did begin. And slowly everything changed inside me. I began to think about how my writing would sound to others. I used to tell all the men who were being successful young how bad this was for them. They were young, and I am not. But when it happens, it is just the same. I was not writing. There was no word inside me. I was not writing.
Well, it all happened many years ago. In fact, over 35 years ago, back in 1934, when I happened to be president of the Arts Club of Chicago. We were really interested in having Gertrude Stein come and lecture to us. And when I was in Paris, I called her up down in the country and asked her if there was any possible chance for coming to the United States. And she finally decided that perhaps she could make it.
Carl Invested and I went down to the dock to meet her. To our astonishment, there were about 30 interviewers, reporters, and photographers down at the dock to meet Gertrude Stein. And she got off the boat with Toklas, and always in charge of any situation. She wasn't at all fazed by this battery of reporters and photographers. We thought it was astonishing, but she just took it as a matter of course. And they had come to kid her. And I just watched Gertrude Stein handle these fellows. She did it so superbly that they all went away and wrote lovely stories about her. Little jokes about a rose is a rose is a rose, which was the standard way of kidding Gertrude Stein. But they obviously liked her.
I didn't realize what a furor of publicity she would create, because I thought that as her writing was so esoteric, there wouldn't be many people who would know about her.
And then we went to lunch, and I literally fell in love with Gertrude Stein. She was one of the most wonderful women I think I've ever met. Warm, interested in people, wonderful face she had. It was a strong face and kind face. And Toklas was a nice woman, too, trailing behind her, fluttering, interesting in her own right. She never got a word in while Gertrude was around, but when Gertrude left the room, Toklas bloomed and turned into quite a person herself. Well, we became close friends at once, and then I got her on an NBC coast-to-coast radio program.
Your coming to the United States to lecture, Miss Stein, implies that there are many people who will be able to comprehend your ideas.
Look here. Being intelligible is not what it seems. You mean by understanding that you can talk about it in the way that you have the habit of talking, putting it in other words. But I mean by understanding enjoyment. If you enjoy it, you understand it. And lots of people have enjoyed it, so lots of people have understood it. And so if I'm telling them this about why my punctuation is, why my so-called repetition is, what my prose is, and what my poetry is.
Perhaps so, but in closing, Miss Stein, would you explain those lines in the portrait of Carl van Vechten that begin tied and untied?
Sure. Tied and untied, and that is all there is about it. Tied and untied, and beside, and as beside, and as untied, and as tied, and as untied, and as beside. Well, just look at those words. The words look like Carl van Vechten. Anybody can know that. Besides, they mean Carl van Vechten. Anybody can know that.
Well, that's rather hard for us normal Americans to see.
What is a normal American? There are lots of quite normal who do see, and how. But after all, you must enjoy my writing. And if you enjoy it, you understand it. If you did not enjoy it, why do you make a fuss about it? There's the real answer.
I had never seen a plane near before. One of the nice things about not going to the movies is that you get a lot of surprises. When I looked at the Earth, I saw all the lines of cubism made at a time when not any painter had ever gone up in an airplane. We're full of adventures, but Chicago, besides being an adventure, was home.
Gertrude was really a very good guest. She entered into everything with the greatest enthusiasm, and she had a rollicking charm that was contagious. She loved our parrot, who sang Poor Butterfly, and she said she was going to write an opera for him. And she was very happy about the Four Saints. I had taken a box for her in the rear and some seats down in the front, and she sashayed back and forth from one to the other, wishing to see the performance from all points of view. And she was thrilled to hear her words set to music. And I asked President Robert Hutchins of the University of Chicago and Thornton Wilder to come to meet her. Thornton had, of course, been interested in her literature for many years, but he had never met her. And he was simply fascinated, and she took to him immediately, and they were soon fast friends, so much so that she asked him to come and stay with her down in Bilignin the next summer.
Well, we'd sent her on a tour all over the country. Every place she went, she was an absolute sensation. Front page stories.
Now listen, I'm no fool. I know that in daily life we don't go around saying a rose is a rose is a rose. Yes, I'm no fool. But I think that in that line, the rose is read for the first time in English poetry for 100 years.
I just went to see what she looked like. And then she took the door of my mind right off its hinges. And now it's wide open.
And the students crowded around her and were simply fascinated.
She would read an excerpt from one of her books, which nobody understood. But when she was finished, she would take her glasses off and say, now what I mean is this. And then she would explain in the most clear and understandable terms what she was driving at. She knew what she was doing.
Miss Stein, why don't you write the way you talk?
If you invited Keats to luncheon and asked him a perfectly simple question, would you expect him to answer with Ode to a Nightingale?
Finally, we said we would publish everything she wrote, and she was delighted with that.
It seems like a fairy tale, but it is true.
I didn't know what I was letting myself in for.
And so we happily, very happily, went on to the SS Champlain. America is my country, but Paris is my hometown.
When I was over in Paris, she persuaded me to come down for a weekend. And I persuaded Joe Davidson, the sculptor, to fly down with me. And we got to Bilignin, where it turned out Gertrude was the unofficial mayor of the town. People came to her with all their problems. She sat there and gave advice on babies, which she knew very little about. Anything else, Gertrude was never reticent about giving advice, whether she knew what she was talking about or not. And the highlight of that weekend was Saturday morning, Picasso arrived. He had written some poetry, and he wanted Gertrude's opinion of his poetry. So she took the poetry and walked into another room, sat Picasso down in a chair for Joe and me to entertain him. Well, his French was very bad, and my French and Joe's French was even worse. So it was a rather stilted conversation, to say the least. Anyway, he was on pins and needles waiting for Gertrude's judgment. And about a half hour later, she came back to the room, put the poetry down on the table, and went over and put both hands on Picasso's shoulders and said, Picasso, go home and paint.
Thornton Wilder was wiser than the rest of us. He took notes of his conversations with Gertrude Stein. They would talk long, and at night he would go home and write them. So I remember saying how much I admired his The Ides of March. You know, it deals with Julius Caesar in terms of diaries and letters and so on. And I said it was an extraordinary technique. And he said, well, he got the idea from Gertrude Stein. She said the author must write as if he's discovering something rather than just telling a fairy tale. Well, that's an example of how a conversational remark with Thornton Wilder, for instance, affected what was one of his most important novels.
I was looking for Gertrude Stein, who I had photographed before the war. I found her in a small village in the southeast of France.
They are always trying to get us to leave France, but here we are and here we stay.
I think that she was protected. I'm sure that she was protected and that she escaped because she was never put on the lists of Jewish people and American people wherever she was. Well, when I saw them for the first time in Aix-les-Bains, they were really almost frightening the way they looked, because they were wearing enormous, you know, they were supposed to be more or less hidden in Savoy, so they had to be completely unconspicuous. They had to sort of blank into the paysage. But then you see they were wearing suits made in what we call sailing cloth, in orange and bright red, both of them with enormous straw hats, Mexican straw hats in matching colors. And they were really so visible in that little town of Aix-les-Bains where they were supposed to hide that it was almost shocking. And that at that time that I made for them some tweed suits that were a little more discreet. But still they were, they were made in the same manner. They had, Gertrude insisted on having a certain pattern for her skirts that she wanted to use. There was a certain, she was trying the skirts not standing but sitting down with the legs, the knees apart, so that she would have enough room to sit the way she wanted to sit. And that was very funny when the first time she had a fitting for a skirt and she started to sit down and said, well, it's all right because I can sit comfortable in it. It was great fun for us.
Here we are in the heart of the French country with nearly 100 German soldiers right in the village and wire entanglements all around the railroad station. And some villages have been burned, and that's all anybody knows.
In the beginning they were at Bilignin, and then they moved to another house, a beautiful house in Cuzes. And I remember I arrived there for lunch one day, and in the Bilignin house they had the wonderful Picasso portrait and the Cezanne portrait facing each other in the library. I arrived in Cuzes and I noticed that there was only the Picasso portrait and no longer the Cezanne. So I asked Alice first where it was, and she eluded the question. She didn't give an answer. Then, as I am very insistent, I asked Gertrude, where is the Cezanne? And she said, well, my dear, we're eating it because I had to sell it.
Today is the landing. Everybody's been phoning to us congratulatory messages upon my birthday, which it isn't, but we know what they mean. I said, is it true there are Americans? Well, lead me to them. And there were Americans, God bless them, and we were pleased. We held each other's hands and we patted each other, and how we talked and how we patted each other in the good American way. And I had to know where they came from and where they were going and where they were born. And this is the last war to remember. Picasso had been impatiently waiting our return. We were very moved when we embraced, and we kept saying, it is a miracle. All the treasures which made our youth, the pictures, the drawings, the objects, all there.
They were really so simple with the GIs, with just American soldiers in Paris wanting to see the great Gertrude Stein, and they would receive them very gently, very nicely, very friendly.
She was inspirational. She was full of life. For instance, it's rather well known that she said that it's not what France gives you, it's what France doesn't take away. You can say that of Paris. You can say that of Gertrude Stein, too. It wasn't exactly what she gave you, but it was what she didn't take away. And she let you be yourself. She encouraged you to be yourself, to grow. And everybody who came in contact with her felt that. And when I first met her, I felt it almost instantly.
They come to see Picasso, and they come to see me. Not because we're celebrities, but because we're rebels. They know Pablo and I have had to put up a fight in our time, and we've won. Off we went to see Germany. Write about us, they all said. And write about them I will.
And the most extraordinary of those late works is Brucey and Willie, which is almost a transcript of the American language as spoken by her GI friends. She began this slow return to naturalism, so that at the end of her life, with the mother of us all, Brucey and Willie, and the play, Yes is for a Very Young Man, it's as naturalistic as it could possibly be, almost.
My writing is as clear as mud, but mud settles and clear streams run on. Identity always worries me, and memory, and eternity. What is the answer? In that case, what is the question?
Irregular circles. Can you think with me? I can hear Alice.
I can hear Alice.
So can a great many people. I named roses, wild flowers. Circle, 15 circles. I wonder if I have heard